MMA Rants and Raves, boxing versus MMA. I'm doing this because I've heard this question come up before. It's actually been on my mind a lot. But the answers to the question that has been brought up have not been satisfactory, and a lot of things have not been discussed, and a lot of things have not been said. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, the best way to look at this, of course, like I always say, is from an unbiased perspective. And doing that means that you have to look at both sports, analyze them, look at what they both have to offer, and that's the best way to come to a conclusion. Now let's start with boxing. I mean, I grew up watching boxing, 1980s, 1990s. The only way to really watch a great fight, well, live, if you didn't go to the arena, you had to watch it on television. You had to watch it pay-per-view. You would have to shell out $40, $50, $60 just to watch a fight. Now, if you're going to shell out that kind of money, it means you really want to see a good fight. Now, you know what? There was really only one guy that people wanted to see back then. And he was in the heavyweight division. And you probably know who he was. I don't even have to tell you. But I'm going to say it anyway. Mike Tyson. This was the guy that people wanted to see. When he entered the boxing industry, when he stepped in the ring, he brought something with him that no other boxer had. He had a combination proportional with speed and power that no other boxer had. He just came into a ring, no matter how big or small or fast the other guy was, he would just destroy his opponents. They called it the Mike Tyson effect. I mean, it looks like sometimes they were having a good fight, and all of a sudden he would come across with this punch that just basically flattened his opponent. He just had this lethal striking ability with speed that just no other boxer had. And what was more remarkable about it, he wasn't this huge guy. He was about 5'10", 215. I mean, that's not a super heavyweight. And for the most part, he didn't even have that great of a reach. So you would think a boxer with these physical characteristics wouldn't be the best out there, but he was. He was just destroying his opponents, and it was very exciting to watch. I admit it. I wanted to see this guy fight. He was something that was unlike anything that anyone has ever seen in a boxing ring, and that's why the sport was so big. It was big because of him, whether you like the guy or not. That's the honest truth. Now, you have a guy this great. You have a guy this great that's fighting and that's dominating the sport, and then he gets in trouble, of course. He tries to make this comeback. When he got in trouble and he was out, boxing basically got really bad. The ratings were down. He makes this comeback. Of course, you see the ratings shooting up in the air. Mike Tyson's back. He's going to be better than ever. And then what happened? His comeback really wasn't that successful. And as a result of that, Tyson was still in. He was coming in. He was out. He was back in again. And basically, his career was ending. Now, when he left the ring, when he finally left, boxing just wasn't the same. He just took it with him. He was one of the greats, and when he left, he took all the air out of the sport. Now, the best way to understand this, the best way to analyze the situation, what has happened to boxing, is to look at other sports. Let's look at the NFL. Let's look at the NBA. Some of the greatest athletes to ever play in the NFL were John Elway and Joe Montana. They basically retired basically in the same era, not far apart from each other, within a few years. And if you look at what happened to the sport, you would think, these guys put millions of fans in the seats. They put millions of fans in front of the television sets. They wanted to see these guys perform. And also, the NFL is a national sport. It's just like boxing. People just don't want to watch it because it's their home team. They watch it because they're great athletes. That's the difference about the NFL with other sports. Now, you would think, as good as these guys were, I mean, they were tremendous, legendary athletes, extremely fun to watch, very exciting. When they retired, you would think the sport would go down the tubes. Who's going to want to watch the NFL if Joe Montana and John Elway are not there anymore? But what happened? The sport actually, you would think it would get worse. The sport actually got better. These guys left. The ratings got even better the following years. So why did the sport continue to be successful? But then if you look at boxing, when Tyson left, it started to lose a lot of its appeal, and the ratings went down. Why is that? It means that the talent base is just not there. The talent base is just not there, and there's other competition for other sports that people want to see. I mean, other athletes have mentioned this. It's not me that's saying this. They say that if an athlete cannot make a pro sports team like the NFL or the NBA or baseball, they go into combat sports, especially if they're a heavyweight. I mean, just look at Brock Lesnar. He's the perfect example. The guy went to the Minnesota Vikings. He was unsuccessful. I mean, he got cut. He couldn't make the team. And then he comes into MMA, and after a few fights, he's the heavyweight champion. So it's the talent base too. That says a lot about the sport itself. And there's a few other things to look at. Boxing is just a one-dimensional sport. You have to have a guy that's really that good for you to have enough attention to watch such a long fight. And it's just not how it used to be with Mike Tyson. So basically, that's the way I see it. Now, if you look at MMA, on the other hand, let's do the direct comparison analysis here. You take boxing. It's one-dimensional. It's just boxing. That's all it is. Two guys jabbing away at each other. But in MMA, it's boxing times 10. I mean, you have everything for every type of fan that likes to see a good fight. You got boxing, you got kickboxing, you got jiu-jitsu, you got wrestling, you got karate, you got Muay Thai, you have sambo, then you have submissions. And within submissions, that's a context. There's all kinds of submissions. There's rear naked chokes, guillotines. There's all kinds of types of things that these guys do, scissor kicks and all kinds of stuff. And if you have a wrestling fan, and if you have a boxing fan that are sitting next to each other watching a fight, there's something in that fight for them both to see and enjoy. While in boxing, it's just boxing. So why not watch the sport that has more to offer? And here's something else to look at. And this is something that the boxing industry can do something about, but they don't. Boxing can be 10 to 12 rounds. You can watch these guys, 36 minutes, even longer with the breaks, like an hour, just dancing around the ring, throwing a jab, and basically nothing is happening. The fans are just falling asleep, especially if it goes to a decision. And what if it doesn't? What if you see a knockout in the first 30 seconds? Then you basically got to go home. What's the point? It's like you're watching a football game in the first quarter, and your team is down 50 points. You're basically going to go home because there's nothing to watch. But in MMA, it's a great structure. A great structure. They put on a card. They put on, instead of one fight, they put on 5-6 fights. So whether the first fight is not interesting, it's great. It could be a great fight, or it could be a lousy fight. You have nothing to worry about, because the next fight you're going to see is going to be totally different no matter what you saw in that fight. Because the first fight's a lightweight, and the next fight you're going to see either a heavyweight or a welterweight. And the first fight can be just a couple of strikers. The next fight you can see a Muay Thai specialist against a guy who does dirty boxing, and then the following fight's going to be a wrestler against a karate guy. The next one's going to be a jiu-jitsu fight. So it's you have a bunch of things going on. You get much more for your money and for your time just to watch this stuff. So the way I see it, based on everything that I've discussed here, I see MMA having more to offer. It just seems with MMA, when you have guys leaving the sport, it's just still getting strong, and it's getting stronger. So I don't want to tick off boxing fans, but it's just not the same. This sport is just not the same. Love to hear what you guys have to say. Please leave the comments, and make sure to subscribe, and thank you for tuning in.